my book is called Supernatural, Meetings with the Ancient Teachers of Mankind, and it has that title for a specific reason. If you look at the story of human evolution as it is presented to us by mainstream science and by the work of archaeologists and anthropologists, you find that it's roughly a 6 million year story from the last common ancestor with the chimpanzee through to anatomically modern humans. And the earliest skeletons of anatomically modern humans that we have date back around 200,000 years. In fact, there's a specific skeleton from Ethiopia dated to 196,000 years, which so far is the oldest fully anatomically modern human remains that have been found. It doesn't mean that more won't be found. There may be older, but at the moment it's a pretty good guess to say that anatomically modern humans began to walk the planet about 200,000 years ago, and exactly what evolutionary processes led to that are not clear. But what's interesting is that even when the human brain is in its fully modern form, it is the same size as our brains today, as far as we can tell, the same structure, although it's difficult to know that absolutely from brain casts. The behavior of these anatomically modern humans is barely recognizable as human in the way that we would define human behavior today. It's much more like the behavior of those hominids from earlier periods going back 3-4 million years. There's no innovation, there's no creativity. There doesn't seem to be a spark of the spiritual in these people. They don't bury their dead. There's no sense of an afterlife. There's no art. There's no symbolism. Their use of stone tools is extremely limited and narrow. And they're really working with the same sort of toolkit that had been around for 1.5 million years previous to the arrival of anatomically modern humans. So although they look like us, they just aren't like us at all. And this continues for another 100,000 years. And then it's really only about 100 or 110,000 years ago that you get the first hint that some kind of symbolic behavior is being introduced. And I would say that is one of the defining characteristics of the human being, is to manipulate and use symbols, to be able to conceive in the abstract of something that is not there and present right in front of your face. It's completely absent from the record before that, and then suddenly you start getting little things that tell us that people are making symbolic statements about themselves. And the earliest things that have been found, and it's important to stress that when something is found, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the earliest thing. Another turn of the spade, we may have some other discovery. But the earliest things that have been found are minutely drilled shell beads. People were stringing them together into necklaces, and this is clear evidence of symbolic behavior. Come down to about 77,000 years ago in South Africa, and you get a geometric pattern deliberately incised into the side of a small piece of stone. And at the same time, from Namibia, there's evidence of what looks very much like shamanistic activities, a cave with a rock sculpted into the form of a gigantic python with offerings left under it, and a kind of room behind where the python is. We don't know what frame to put on this, but it's clearly modern human behavior. Then the archaeological record has nothing much to add for the next 40,000 years or so. And really rather suddenly after that, somewhere between 40,000 and 30,000 years ago, it's as though a light has been switched on in the human brain all over the world. And you get this extraordinary, breathtaking rock and cave art being engraved into rock surfaces, into cave walls, and painted using a mixture of colors, typically black and red, some yellows, and depicting from the very beginning, from the moment that this begins, depicting beings that actually we do not see and our ancestors did not see in daily life, beings that you can only call supernatural beings. For example, from the cave of Chauvet in France, which dates to about 33,000 years ago. deep inside the cave on a hanging section of rock. You have a painting of a man. He has the legs and the buttocks and the lower back of a man, but the upper back, the hump of a bison, the head and horns of a bison. And he is straddling a second figure, which is a female figure, a corpulent female figure, human, but strange, missing the head, and the right arm of this female figure is transforming into the head of a lion. And this immediately rules out any notion that these are depictions of people dressed up in skins, although even if they were, we would have to ask themselves why they wanted to make themselves look part animal and part human. But this is clearly the figure of a human being transforming into a lion, or a lion transforming. It's a transformation. And so you have to ask yourself, where did the artists get this idea from? What was the inspiration that led to this? And why do we find the same theme repeated all around the world? And there's a technical term for these beings that are part animal and part human, and that is therianthropes, and that's from the Greek therion, meaning wild beast, and anthropos, meaning man. From South Africa, countless examples of the same things. Typically an eland, the head of an eland, the body of a human being. Sometimes a lion man, again in South Africa. And you find this all over the world, following that period between 40 and 30,000 years ago. At the same time, you find other changes in human behavior. Our ancestors are in every way becoming instantly recognizable as human. They start burying their dead. With their dead, they bury grave goods, food, water. Clearly, they believe that some essence of the individual continues after physical death. And again, you have to ask yourself, where did this idea come from? And it's really enormously frustrating when you look at a century of scholarship in this field, to find that for more than 80 years, no progress was made whatsoever in understanding what inspired those ancient artists, what led them to create the imagery that they created, and why that process is connected to what can rightly be described as the greatest leap forward in the evolution of human behavior in the entire 6 million year story of human beings. Just no answers to those questions. And then in the 1980s, a South African Professor David Lewis Williams, the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa, begins to propose a different theory, and he begins to work it and support it with evidence, and gradually to win over his colleagues in the field. And that theory is that the artists, in whichever culture they lived, whether it was South Africa, whether it was North America, whether it was Europe, that they were shamans, the kind of functionaries that we find in hunter-gatherer societies to this day, whose business it is to commune with the other world. And what is the common denominator of shamans all around the world is the deliberate induction, control of, and use of altered states of consciousness. And that it's in these altered states of consciousness that they have fundamental experiences which are in the tribal, the hunter-gatherer context, those experiences are integrated into daily life. If you wish to know where to go to find water, to bring rain, where the herds of game are congregated, enter the spirit world, gain the information there, come back to this realm, and put it into practice.